I'm James Brierton. It is 11 o'clock Eastern Time on Saturday, September 9th, 2017. Thanks so much for joining us for this special live update from the Carolina Weather Group on Hurricane Irma. We're joining you live tonight on Facebook, on Periscope, on Twitter, and on YouTube. So thank you very much for staying with us for our continuing coverage. Let's go back over now to that satellite loop. We're at this 11 o'clock hour. You can see the eye there of Hurricane Irma just north of Cuba, where it has been for the last 24 hours or so, flirting with the northern shore there of Cuba. And you can even see at this hour the eye getting a little bit smaller, the storm itself a little weaker in intensity. Only, and I use only relatively speaking, a Category 3 right now, and that's why we're not quite seeing the same signature of the hurricane we saw just days ago when it was out over open waters. You may recall from when it was out over open waters, the storm was very large, very round, very symmetrical, and when we look at this picture, we're not quite seeing that. You know, we see a lot of wind and rain to the north over what we are seeing here is just the southern tip of Florida, and even some of the outer reachings of that in the top left corner of your screen, north and west of the eye, but the eye itself in the southern part of the hurricane still interacting with that friction with Cuba, and that is certainly some good news. We will take any land friction we can get. I mean, a Category 3 storm, by all means, is still a major hurricane, and actually, as of the 11 o'clock Eastern update from the National Hurricane Center, the storm had maximum sustained winds of 120 miles per hour and was moving northwest at 6 miles per hour, so relatively slow. Why that northwest direction is so important, and I'll go ahead and put the satellite back on the screen for you, is because if you were with us last night, you knew that we were waiting for the storm to turn northward. It's been going west for quite some time, but the big question has been, when will this storm turn north? And we've been looking at all these spaghetti models, all these computer interpretations of when the storm is going to turn north, and we were waiting to find out exactly when that was going to happen, because that would determine where the possible landfall could be. And as we can see right now, this storm is slowly heading to the northwest, beginning to turn, and that's why the 11 o'clock forecast track from the National Hurricane Center, I'm going to go ahead and put it up on your screen right now as our co-panelist Scotty Powell gets situated. We are looking at the 11 o'clock update. Actually, I do apologize. We are still waiting for that 11 o'clock update to come in. What you are looking at on your screen right now is the latest graphical interpretation of the National Hurricane Center forecast as of 8 p.m. We had the same problem last night, and I do apologize, but what happens is there are just so many people right now trying to log on to the National Hurricane Center website that the image, although published right at 11 o'clock, is taking a few minutes just to kind of reach everyone, because everyone is certainly keyed in on this storm. We just lost Scotty. I was going to go to Scotty Powell in Morganton, North Carolina, but I'll go back to him in just a few moments. Please keep coming in with your questions and comments on Facebook Live. I'll be taking a look at them here on my phone in just a moment to try to answer as many of them as I can. But the other thing I want to show you right now is just the ghost town that is Miami, Florida. Take a look at this DOT picture here. This is Interstate 95 in the downtown area of Miami. You can see out there in the distance still some lights on. But Scotty Powell, every time we look at this picture, there's not a single soul or a single car on the road, and I think that is good news.
Yeah, it is. I can't see you, James. All I see is your icon.
For reasons I won't bore everyone with. I will send you back some video, but Scotty, I apologize. We're not going to be able to get you up on the screen tonight, but we do have your audio with us.
Okay, no worries then. It's pretty quiet down there, so that's a good thing. I was able to monitor the National Weather Service chat in Miami, and a big story coming out of that area is the possibility of tornadoes. I can see now. Tornadoes down there, and in fact, the Storm Prediction Center put them under an enhanced risk tonight of severe weather, with tornadoes being the biggest threat. So I did see a few tornadoes, some videos and stuff that some of the local affiliates down in the Miami area have been sharing. But yeah, it's good to see nobody out on the road in Miami. I do know a curfew went in effect at 8 o'clock, and it looks like everybody's following that, so that's good. And
let's take a look here. Yeah. This is a picture just north of the Tampa area, and Interstate 75 here does look to be open. I think I see some headlights off in the distance, but that looks relatively quiet as there too. We hope a lot of folks who were intending to get out did get out, because certainly as we look at this satellite image tonight as it reloads here, time is certainly kind of winding down. And let's walk through some of these other graphics here. Let's see if we have them updated just yet. I'm waiting for them to update Scotty from the National Hurricane Center, but just like last night, it is taking a good hot second for that 11 o'clock update to come on in.
Yeah, I imagine everybody in the weather world is on the National Hurricane Center site right now. So I am going to scroll Twitter, and I know a lot of our broadcast friends are able to get that stuff
Hmm.
into their systems before
Yeah,
the
so I
actual
was I was
image
able to
comes
get
out.
some of the data, and I know you were just joining us. We may have some other folks on Facebook Live just joining us as well too. So I do know that at this hour it is still a Category 3 storm, maximum sustained winds of 120 miles per hour, and is moving to the northwest at 6 miles per hour. But we do not yet have that updated cone, so we will look for that. Scotty, I'm going to read off some questions we're getting in from Patty, who is joining us on Facebook Live tonight, and thank you to Patty and everyone else who's joining us on our platforms. What will the conditions be like in Columbia, South Carolina, and around what time would it hit South Carolina? That is a great question, and we know certainly as the Carolina Weather Group, we are having a lot of folks joining us from the Carolinas. I think that the good news here is that the impacts that we were expecting earlier in the week for the Carolinas have lessened a bit, but we still do have some projected impacts. This is an experimental power outage map, Patty, that the Ohio State University, Texas A&M University, and University of Michigan put together. It's experimental, but it gives us an idea where they project the power outages to be, and you can see that the Carolinas, for the most part, are no longer expecting at least in this experimental map, any sort of widespread outages. But I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see some outages, because let me even show you this. This is from a little bit earlier tonight. We should be getting an updated version in the next few minutes from the National Hurricane Center. But this is just showing you the reaching effects of the tropical storm force winds. So tropical storm force winds, pop quiz, 49 miles per hour, Scotty.
Tropical storm force winds 35 to 74.
Okay, all right. So, when we look at all of these areas contained within this kind of egg shape here, those are going to be all of the areas that feel that outer reach of this storm. Whether it is a hurricane or tropical storm, we're expecting folks from Birmingham through Atlanta, through Columbia, up into Charlotte to see periods of windy weather on Monday and on Tuesday, and even some rain with that as well too. Are we going to see exactly what is being seen on satellite north of Cuba right now? No, not at all. This storm will weaken once it does come ashore. But the big question tonight is, where will this storm make a U.S. landfall? And although you heard me at the top of this broadcast say, relatively speaking, the storm is a little bit weaker and it's a Category 3, this eye, as it moves to the north and west, is going to get further away from Cuba and back out into open waters near Key West as it turns to the north and eventually flirts with the Tampa area. All of that time it's going to be out over open water, and that is all time where the storm will have the opportunity to strengthen, because that is some really nice warm water, nice from a hurricane perspective, that it will need to strengthen. Scotty, are you seeing the forecast cone updated just yet from the National Hurricane Center graphics?
No, I haven't seen the cone out yet, but I did see the latest readings, and I'm sure you probably already went over that. So I'll skip that. But I will say, James, you were talking about Irma as the storm starts to move off the coast of Cuba, and it's really starting to really gain some strength. If you pulled up that infrared satellite that you were
Sure.
just showing, you can really see the convection around the eye wall really start to peak back up over the last 3 or 4 frames, especially there on the left side. And so as Irma moves into the Florida Straits, that water ocean temperature is anywhere between 86 to 88, 89 degrees. So that is just the fuel that Irma will need to gain strength. And I've been looking, some of the recon data from the hurricane hunters have started noticing that the pressure is starting to slowly decrease, not rapidly, but it is slowly decreasing, and that tells us that the storm is strengthening. So I imagine as the 2 a.m. advisory comes out, it'll be stronger, and then once we get the full suite of information out at 5 a.m., I'm afraid that Irma will probably regain back into a high Category 3, maybe even a low Category 4 as it approaches the southwest portions of Florida.
And I just want to add one little piece of color commentary, if I can, to what Scotty just says. When the pressure gets lower, that is actually the sign of a stronger storm. So in this case, that pressure, the stronger of a storm we're going to be dealing with. So I didn't want anybody walking away hearing lower numbers and thinking that was necessarily a sign of weakening. It's actually the exact opposite in this
Yep.
scenario.
Yeah. I also have the Facebook Live put up. Tammy is asking about what it means for Maiden, North Carolina, and what's the likelihood of Irma moving east after Florida. And it just doesn't look like it's going to happen. I don't think I can stream my image here, but I was looking at the visible satellite rate. I'm sorry, the water vapor, and it was really starting to show that. Little shortwave that we was talking about last night. It's really moving into the Louisiana, Mississippi area, and it's been moving in pretty good today. It started off in the Midwest and has already made it into the deep South. So once that upper level low, that little shortwave gets established in the South, that's going to start to pull Irma to the west, and that's why that cone, the cone of uncertainty, has really tracked away from North Carolina and much of South Carolina into the Tennessee Valley as that upper level low, that little shortwave gets going in the deep South. So, I would say 98, 99% sure that it's not going to move back east once it gets into the Florida Peninsula.
Yeah, I think that window on that has all but expired at this point, because as you look at this satellite loop, I mean, it is moving to the north and west ever so slowly. It would almost have to do essentially a U-turn to go to the east side of Florida. I'm going to go ahead and put up the forecast cone from 8 p.m. And I want to let everybody know that I just give it a good hard refresh, and I'm not yet seeing the 11 o'clock update from the National Hurricane Center. I do apologize.
I have it from another source. It's not the Weather Service,
okay,
but I can kind of provide a little colored commentary from the 11 p.m. advisory.
All right, I don't want to cause too much confusion by putting one thing up and talking about another, but it may come to that here in the next few moments or so.
Well, I'll share just what I see right here.
Yeah, sure.
The Hurricane Center taking Irma on the west coast of Florida, potentially making a landfall just south of Tampa as a Category 3 Sunday night at 8 p.m. as a 120-mile-per-hour storm. It continues to hug the west coast of Florida as it goes into the panhandle of Florida now. That once it gets into the panhandle, it starts the track west. By Monday at 8 p.m., it has a tropical storm over the Columbus, Georgia area.
Oh.
It'll track across central Alabama into northern Mississippi. And by 7 p.m. Tuesday night, Irma will be a tropical depression over Memphis.
Okay, so let me go ahead and put up exactly what you were just talking about. I do now have that graphic to represent what Scotty was just talking about, the latest forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center as of 11 p.m. Eastern. Scotty, I don't want to repeat exactly what you just said, but now that we're looking at it, why don't you walk us through this a little bit again, and we'll look at the visual here with you.
Yeah, so as you can see, Irma, I'm going to go to this other screen that I was reading off. It's easier for me to see from the graphic here, so just give me just a second. So, again, Irma off the coast of Key West, or actually probably going over Key West around 8 a.m. tomorrow morning as a 125 mile per hour Category 3 hurricane. That is a major hurricane, Category 3 or higher. And then as it tracks up to the north, it's going to be hugging the coast near Fort Myers, and looks like it makes landfall just south of Tampa. So Tampa is going to be in that northeast quadrant. So Tampa, I expect, is going to be pretty active tomorrow afternoon and evening into the early morning hours Monday as Irma tracks up the west side of Florida. Again, kind of as the Florida panhandle kind of dips in before it goes into the Gulf where Tallahassee's at. It looks like it could go back over water and then make another landfall going into the Tallahassee area Monday morning around 8 a.m. as a Category 1 hurricane with 90-mile-per-hour winds. Monday evening, it'll be in the Columbus, Georgia area as it starts to make its trek to the west as a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm. And then by Tuesday night at 7 o'clock as a tropical depression, the National Hurricane Center has that low pressure over the Memphis, Tennessee area where our good friend Eric lives. And Eric had to deal with Harvey. What was that, last week? All these tropical systems coming together. I can't remember how long ago they were, but it does look like the Memphis, Tennessee area can once again be seeing the effects of another tropical system by the mid part of next week.
Thank you very much for that commentary, Scotty, and that's exactly what we're looking at here on this 11 o'clock run from the National Hurricane Center. I want to remind folks that when you're looking at this graphic that is updated right now twice a day, no, 4 times a day, every 6 hours, this is the human interpretation of real-time data. It is current conditions. It's looking at forecast data. It's looking at other things in the atmosphere. And it's a bunch of really talented people at the National Hurricane Center's National Weather Service office there in Miami, putting this forecast cone together. So that is the human interpretation, and that's why it's the gold standard. But one of the things you hear a lot about on TV are these models, the spaghetti models, and those are the raw computer outputs, and there are tons of models, and just like human beings, no two models are the same. Everyone's got a little bit different personality. Everyone has a little bit strengths and weaknesses. These lines right here represent graphically each one of those computer model runs and what they think the storm is going to do. And when the lines are that close together, that is a sign that all of these different models are thinking the same thing. And so that gives us good faith and consistency and high confidence in the forecast as of now. The 11 o'clock update, again, the bullseye here is still going to be Key West. It's still going to be the west side of Florida. We're looking at a landfall anywhere from Naples, Fort Myers, Tampa, Sarasota, that side. And then like Scotty was just talking about, depending on exactly where the eye is, we could technically get into a situation where we have another landfall somewhere in that panhandle of Florida. But what I want to remind folks, when we were looking at these spaghetti models, when we were looking at the forecast cone, we're talking about the position of the eye. But look at the size of this hurricane. It is hundreds of miles across. Whether that eye is on any side of Florida, east, west, center, it doesn't matter. Everyone in Florida is going to feel the effects of this hurricane. The worst effects are closer to the eye, yes, but when you were talking about a major hurricane like Hurricane Irma, you can see just how intense those outer reaches of the storm are. And that's why right now, with an eye that is still near Cuba, we're already seeing rain and wind and waves and even some spin-up tornadoes back up towards Miami. Here's a live look at downtown Miami. One of the last things I want to attempt to do here before we sign off, Scotty, and I'm going to work on pulling up tropical tidbits for us to look at a graphical representation of what the storm may be doing. But while I prepare that, it sounds like you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah, just watch the southwest portions here. I'm afraid that the National Hurricane Center and the local weather offices in the Florida area have really been stressing the storm surge. And though Irma is going to be a Category 3 as the storm treks up the west coast, it's been a Category 5 and has carried all this energy. And so we're going to see some big storm surge numbers in the Florida Keys, up into the southwest portions of Florida, even in the Tampa Bay area. I heard a stat today, and I can't remember the number of years, but it's been a long time since the Tampa Bay area has felt the direct hits of a major hurricane. So, we was worried about Miami a couple of nights ago, and now we're kind of worried about Tampa Bay because, again, that area hasn't seen a major hurricane in a long time. So all those areas on the west coast of Florida, be on the watch out, not only for those winds, but also for that storm surge. I think the heavy rainfall is going to be kind of a third kind of priority in this, because storm surge obviously is going to be number one in the winds, but they're also expecting some heavy rain to develop or to continue to affect the Florida Peninsula as well. So a lot of things going on, and like we talked about, the tornadoes that have already taken place in the Miami area. At one time, I counted 6 tornado warnings. So we did get a couple of confirmations, one in the Fort Lauderdale area, and also one in the Homestead area, near the Miami Homestead Motor Speedway. So we have had some confirmed tornadoes as well. So just all kinds of craziness going on right now on the Florida Peninsula.
Yeah, and let's pop up that forecast cone again, the update from the 11 o'clock Eastern time here for the National Hurricane Center. Not only we see a slight shift in that forecast cone as the storm is projected to make its way into Georgia and now Alabama by the time we get into Monday and Tuesday, but I also want to explain those colors that you see outlined along the shoreline. Everyone there in red, those are areas where a hurricane warning has been posted. That is most of Florida at this point. If you are in an area, a coastal community outlined there in blue, which does include Savannah, Georgia, Charleston, South Carolina, and some other coastal communities there, such as Hilton Head along the South Carolina coastline. Those are tropical storm warnings. So we're still expecting to see there tropical storm for its wind and rain. And here's why. Here is, in just a moment, I'm going to pop up one of several computer models. Again, there are lots of computer models, but this is one that we particularly like. It is the American GFS model, and it is going to show us graphically, visually, a future representation of what this storm is expected to do after it makes its way past Cuba, past Florida. And I want to show you, there's been questions about what type of impacts we're going to see here in the Carolinas, and you can see as that storm makes its way along the Georgia-Florida line and the Georgia-Alabama line that we are seeing some effects of that with some wind and some rain even here into the Carolinas. And Scotty, I'm going to attempt to slow this down and see if I can go frame by frame to really zero in on what it is we might be seeing. Forgive me there as I kind of go backwards, but so here is essentially the current time. And then over the course of the next few hours, as we go into tomorrow morning, you can see the storm is projected to go over the Keys. Again, this particular model at this particular time was showing the storm a little bit closer to the Everglades there, but we could see a landfall a little bit closer to Tampa. Either way, you can still see heavy and strong winds. Those are the black lines that are really close together, so very strong, devastating winds. And of course, the rain, as you're used to seeing on radar, is represented here in greens and yellows and reds. And then as I advance this and the storm comes again near that Georgia-Florida line up Interstate 75 into Georgia, I'm going to go one more frame to right about there. And although we're not seeing the strongest effects of the storm into areas of central or eastern Carolina, you can still see that if you're in western Carolina, especially in South Carolina, you're probably going to be seeing some heavy wind and rain at times as we look ahead to Tuesday. Any special preparations happening in your office, Scotty, in the line of work you do with emergency management?
Oh, we've had our updates today. We've had a couple of conference calls, and we're continuing to watch, but we're optimistically looking looking at these models and thinking that maybe our threat is kind of decreasing over the Western Carolinas as that track continues to the west. We're still preparing for some damage and wind gusts Monday night into Tuesday morning, and the rainfall rates look to be cut down in half than what we were thinking yesterday. So more manageable 2 to maybe 3 inches of rain with some 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts. So it's going to kind of be just a cold, wet, windy day Monday afternoon into Tuesday, but we're still going to be watching it. But as of right now, we're just a little bit more optimistic than what we was yesterday and the days before that. So that's good. And that track, now is well south of Atlanta, the center as it moves to the west. So again, we're going to see those effects Monday afternoon and Tuesday morning, early Tuesday morning. But we do believe that we'll probably escape the worst part that looks to be going through the Georgia area with those tropical storm force winds.
And we are just receiving word that now this 11 o'clock update has come up from the National Hurricane Center. We're going to see some adjustments to those warnings that we told you about. The warnings really are not going to change. The areas that are in red right now are going to stay in red. We know there's a hurricane heading for Florida. I think everyone knows that at this point. What we are expecting to see here in the next few minutes is a tropical storm watch where conditions are likely over the coming days for tropical storm force conditions, and that watch is expected to be expanded and issued for parts of central Georgia, including the Atlanta metro area. So that will be pretty interesting to see when that comes out, because having lived in Georgia for several years, I mean, that's not typically an area where you get a tropical storm. Is it certainly possible? Yes, it's not that far from the southeast coast, but certainly very, very interesting to see that, and we will watch for those updates. Speaking of updates, we've been talking about the 11 o'clock update here from the National Hurricane Center. As Scotty mentioned, we will get an update at about 2 a.m. where they will update the position of the eye and and the winds, and then we'll get another track update from the National Hurricane Center. That is this cone that the human beings in Miami put together. An update at that will come out at 5 a.m., so you can check back when you do wake up in the morning to find out exactly what the changes may be. But the big headline here at 11 o'clock Eastern on this Saturday is that no significant changes to the forecast for Florida. We're still talking about a major hurricane, a very strong, devastating hurricane for many folks residing in Florida. But now the extended forecast, again, shifting a little bit further west, looking at a tropical storm Irma to be somewhere in that Columbus, Georgia, Auburn, Alabama area by Monday at about 8 p.m. And we're expecting to see some tropical storm watches issued for parts of those areas coming out here in the next few minutes. The other thing we'll be watching for in the term of Weather Geeks overnight, we talked about it a little bit last night on this show, is the next big model run that comes out. I showed you the GFS a few minutes ago. Coming out during the overnight hours just before 2 a.m. will be the European model. Yes, the Europeans are watching these hurricanes as well. They have a pretty good computer run with some pretty good technology, and so we will all be watching anxiously for that. I'm going to give one last look here at any existing questions and turn things over to Scotty Powell for any closing thoughts here before we wrap things up here on this Saturday night. Scotty?
Yeah, I just hope that folks in the Florida area have prepared if they're sticking around and have are in safe shelter. Thoughts and prayers with them tonight and throughout the day tomorrow. And as the storm approaches us, prepare for some rainy conditions and windy conditions Monday afternoon through Tuesday morning, and then by that we'll start to clear out, and then all eyes will turn to Jose, because Jose in the models runs today has done some interesting things, and I think the East Coast may have to watch Jose as we go through the mid to late part of this coming week.
Thank you very much for that, Scotty, and I'll let everyone know we do very much thank you for following us here on social media, the Carolina Weather Group, as we continue to watch this Hurricane Irma and its possible effects on the Carolinas. Our thoughts and prayers are with everyone who is in the direct impact of this storm. We also want to let everyone know who might be in the immediate line of any damage or impact from the storm to please trust your local broadcast meteorologists, trust your local emergency management officials, and all of those folks at the National Hurricane Center, National Weather Service, and everyone else who is going to be pulling some very, very long hours here to make sure we have all the crucial information to keep everyone safe. We thank those folks as well, too. Last closing thought for me is also to encourage you to go to CarolinaWeatherGroup.com, and we have information on our website where you can download and be alerted for severe weather. When you download the Stormwatch Plus app, it is free, nationwide severe weather bulletins, but for a small fee that does come back to help support what we do here at the Carolina Weather Group, you can activate some severe weather bulletins. So as long as your cell phone is working and you have data, that is something to keep in your back pocket. But of course, in a situation like this, we're always telling folks, Scotty, of that free service from the National Weather Service of NOAA weather radios. Now is a really good time to make sure you have a NOAA weather radio. It is not dependent on power. It works on batteries. It is not dependent on internet or data from any particular wireless company, because it is coming over the airwaves, and it'll be a great tool to alert anyone who may be in the line of this storm, because as I've been saying the last few nights, we know where the wind is going, we know where the rain's going, but one of my concerns is these tornadic spin-ups. We don't know where those are going to be. We've already seen a few already in southern Florida, and we'll watch for more of those over the course of the coming days and hours. Thanks again so much for joining us. I'm James Brierton on behalf of Scotty Powell. We will see you back here tomorrow for updates on Hurricane Irma.